The RMS Titanic, one of the most famous tragedies of all time. The Titanic set sail on April 10, 1912 for her maiden voyage, but as people would find out, on April 15, 1912, it became her last. The ship hit an iceberg and the unsinkable sank. The accident killed 63% of the passengers on board, ranging from a 13-month-old girl to a 74-year-old grandfather. Many were never recovered from the icy waters of the Atlantic. Those who were received mental and physical trauma that plagued them for the rest of their lives. The Titanic's sinking was one of the worst maritime accidents to this day, but many lives could have been saved during this disaster if it weren't for the many communication errors made on that infamous night. When the Titanic was being built, only the best of the best could be used on the unsinkable. So when it came to radios, they went with the new wireless telegraph, invented by Guglielmo Marconi, an Irish-Italian pioneer. The clear night mixed with the top-notch Morse code radio made it possible for several ships and on-land radio centers to hear the Titanic's cry for help. So what went wrong? To start, the lines were too busy. Wireless telegraphs were all the rage in the Titanic's time, much like Instagram or TikTok today. This made it difficult to realize which telegraphs were more or less important as they went through message after message, most being for passengers on a ship from friends or family on land. Two radio operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, were jam-packed the night of the crash. So when the SS Californian sent out a message to the Titanic that they encountered ice and interrupted another message that Phillips was interpreting, he quickly sent a frustrated message back to the Californian: "Shut up." He was too flustered and angry from the work overflow to realize that he had just silenced a message that could have saved thousands of lives had it been heard. Second, the communication between the ship's employees and the passengers was much too calm, keeping the passengers from seeing the true danger they were in. When the ship first hit the iceberg, the passengers were understandably confused, so they went to the deck or other rooms on the ship and asked the workers what had happened. Unfortunately, the officers, room service workers, etc. were underwhelmingly calm given their situation, and no one was worried enough to realize the problem ahead of them. As told by survivors in first-hand accounts,
no one appeared to be alarmed. I was told there was no danger.
There is no danger. An officer just told me so.
So it was a question as who was there in time to get into one of the all too few lifeboats. Well, they weren't launched very quickly. Because at first, no one thought anything was going to happen. But my father went away and spoke to an officer, and he said, they are going to launch lifeboats, but you'll all be back on board for breakfast.
As you can see, the employees on the Titanic were given underestimated information, and not realizing the vastness of the situation gave the wrong impression to the passengers. This resulted in many passengers staying in their rooms until it was too late. Going back to the issues with the telegraph, the communication between the ships after the Titanic sent out its message for help was complete chaos. While Morse code may work really well if it's just a few people talking back and forth, many people talking at once is practically a death sentence, and in this case it was for thousands of people. The closest ship to the Titanic, the SS Californian, received the message, but the communication officer aboard the Californian had gone to bed early. So when sailors informed him that something might have happened with the Titanic, he ignored them and went back to bed. Luckily, several other ships within the proximity of the Titanic's radio heard the message, including the Frankfurt, Mount Temple, and Piranga, and a nearby lighthouse called Cape Race. Each location began sending out the message to other ships nearby, and this is where the issue starts. Ships from all over the Atlantic Ocean began communicating with the Titanic, trying to get more information or asking what they should do. When one ship tried to relay information, another ship would ask a question, and they were getting nowhere. With the complete disorder as the Titanic was sinking, no one had time to listen to each individual message. The only thing the Titanic could do was send out SOS and hope for the best. By 1 a.m., the workers on the Titanic could see that their situation was dire. They began sending out more frantic messages more frequently. This meant that the other ships were trying to communicate faster as well, which made for even more confusion. One message would interrupt another, and again, no one was getting anywhere. Along came the RMS Olympic, the Titanic's sister ship. The Olympic realized the craziness of the situation and began sending out a repeated message for everyone else to stop talking. Eventually, the ships figured it out and stopped sending messages. This gave the Titanic enough time to send coordinates and to tell the others to send as many lifeboats as possible, but their time was running out. At 1:30 a.m., the Titanic sent out one last message: "We cannot last much longer." The engine rooms then flooded and the ship lost power. The Carpathia arrived at the scene around 4 in the morning and was able to save over 700 people, but for over 1,500 others, their fate had been sealed. The great Titanic was gone, and too many lives were lost with it, all because of a few easily avoidable mistakes. So here is the question asked today: what could have been done differently on that night to save the thousands that the Titanic's impending doom took?